You're listening to Liberty USA, sponsored by County Citizens Defending Freedom. You, as an American, have freedom in your DNA, and we are here to help educate, empower, and encourage you to stand for your freedom.
Hello, County Citizens. For the month of July, we wanted to take you in depth to the importance of local government, and who better to do that than our very own Jeff Childers. So, Jeff, thank you for joining Liberty USA today.
You're welcome.
I have to make a joke before we jump in, but the first time I met you, you asked me if I read your blog, Coffee and COVID, and I said no, but my dad does, and he calls me every morning and tells me what I need to know. So I'm happy to report back that I now read your blog every morning, and yeah.
Much better, thank you.
You're welcome. But for those who don't know, can you tell us how Coffee and COVID got started?
Yes, I always wanted, since I was a little boy, I always wanted to be a blogger. So, you know, over the years, I read books and I practiced, and I'm actually making up all of that. It never occurred to me in a million years to do a blog. What happened was, at the beginning of the pandemic, we're talking about March, April 2020, things were really bleak, right? And it was a difficult time. Nobody knew what was happening, how bad it was. There were these videos from China showing people falling over in the street. And, you know, all of our public officials it was just doomsday. The cases were rising exponentially and all this stuff. And I sat down one time after listening to a local county commission meeting when my county commissioner said he had done his own calculations, and by his calculations, everybody in the county would have COVID within 3 weeks or something like that. Something just like totally nuts. And they used that to justify mandatory masking and some of the earliest lockdowns in the state. And so I'm an attorney, and I deal in facts. That's my job, right? So when I put on a case, I have to present evidence to a judge or a jury. I have to prove it. It's not just because somebody said so. It's not because somebody said that they did the calculation. So I wanted to see the data. And, you know, at that, I stopped everything I was working on. I pulled down from the state of Florida. I got their data, and I started doing my own calculations. And it didn't look anything like what this guy had said it was going to be like. I didn't see, maybe the first 3 or 4 days it quote unquote doubled, because it went from 1 case to 2 cases to 4 cases to 8 cases, right? And you could legitimately say, well, it was doubling every 2 days, but then it went to 10 cases and then it went to 12 cases, and it started, you know, just being very slow growth and not doubling at all. And so I was shocked. I'm like, this guy's lying to us. And so in doing my research, I had built a little spreadsheet. So I logged onto my Facebook account for the first time in years, right? I'm not a Facebooker. I'm not a social media guy. But so I logged on and I posted my little spreadsheet, and I wrote some comments about it so people could understand, you know, what they were looking at in case it would help anybody else. Mm-hmm. And at that time I had, you know, probably 250 Facebook friends, and I thought that was a lot. And so what happened was people started sending it all over the place. And so the next day I updated it with the, you know, because we're all, remember at that time, COVID was all anybody was talking about or thinking about, right? We're all sitting at home, stuck, and
on social media.
On social media, trying to find out what's going on, marinating in all of this. So I started updating it every day, and I started including a few things that I had found in my, you know, research the day before on social media or whatever, but only the good news, right? So maybe a study came out that said it's not as bad as what we think it is, or, you know, there was somebody who did an analysis and it showed that you know, even if you get it, if you're healthy, you have more than a 99% chance of staying out of the hospital, right? And so I would just link to that stuff, and I put boiled it down for people, and I always made sure to use just ironclad sources, no conspiracy theories, you know, none of that wacky stuff, but the legit science. And that's when my Facebook really started blowing up. So today, I didn't even know that you max out at 5,000 friends. But I maxed out at 5,000 friends, and now people have to follow me, and I have about 30,000 followers after my 5,000 friends. And I've got a Substack now, and my Substack, I think we just broke 75,000 subscribers on the Substack. So between the Facebook and the Substack, it's over 100,000 easily. And a lot of the people forward it like crazy. So then I started to get these comments and emails, and they were really troubling. This is like in the summertime of 2020, and I've lost track of how many I've gotten, and they all followed the same theme. And the theme was, "Dear Jeff, thank you so much for what you do on Coffee and COVID. It's the only good news that I get." And then they would say something like, "I live in New York City. I haven't been out of my apartment in 3 months, and I was about to kill myself. And somebody sent me a copy of your blog." And I suddenly realized that what I was doing was not just sort of providing my own outlet for my own anxiety, by putting this together, but I was really reaching and helping a lot of people. And so it convinced me that there was a lot of responsibility for what I was doing. And I really think it's a God thing. And I think, God sort of put me in that spot with that mission and with my background. And as a lawyer, I approach things very analytically. And again, I'm looking much more at what's the evidence, not what the theories are or, what speculation might be, but, what could we prove? What's for real that we can hang on to? And it's been a real blessing for folks. And so now, as you know, I've got a whole long post every single day, and I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and have my coffee, and I start working on the day's post. Mm-hmm. My wife, Michelle, is a great help. She's kind of the research department. She knows the kind of stories that I like, and she picks them out during the day. And so I've got Michelle's list to start from, and now I've got my sources that I use that I know are reliable, so I go look at those. And I've got my own viewpoint on the pandemic and on what the world is going through right now. I mean, it's a crazy world right now. Mm-hmm. I kind of wonder for young people like you. I mean, to you, I don't know if it seems normal, but you don't have 55 years of knowing what normal was like. As crazy as things got, it never got this crazy before. Right, mm-hmm. So you don't have that point of comparison, but how do we, what are we to think about this crazy world, right? What does it all mean? Where is it going? What's it going to be like when we get there, wherever it is going? And so I've got my own thoughts, and I try to pull together again the good news, right? Where we might be going that is much better than where we are right now.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So I don't know. Does any of that make any sense, or does it just sound crazy?
No, it's perfect. I just wanted our listeners to know a little bit of the backstory, and if they weren't aware, that they can go follow you to be able to read your blog. But diving into CCDF, we're very involved in local government. And so I want to know what initially sparked your interest to be involved with CCDF.
So I got connected with CCDF early in 21 in order to help Polk County out with its school mask mandate. Mm-hmm. And I was contacted as a lawyer because I had done legal work in the area of masks. I've gotten some really fantastic decisions that made law and things. And so I started working with the CCDF team in Polk County, and I immediately recognized that we had a very similar worldview on something sort of essential, and that was we both believed that the answer to saving this country begins in the local county. And I used to put it like this. I used to say, talk about the Superman fallacy. The Superman fallacy is this idea that some national figure is going to fly in and save us, right? President mm-hmm. Trump is going to come back, and then he's going to set everything right. Or Ron DeSantis is going to be elected president, and he's going to fix everything. And I don't believe in the Superman fallacy. You know, Supermen tend to let us down. And I used President Trump as an example. And I don't mean that in any critical way. What I mean is, you know, we had 4 good years with President Trump where it seemed like a lot of good stuff was happening. But you know what? He didn't drain the swamp. And the swamp ate him. And so we were going along thinking we had it all in the bag, and, you know, Trump was running his campaign, and he had all these fabulous crowds, and the momentum was on his side, and the energy, and Joe Biden was campaigning from his basement, and he couldn't put a coherent sentence together, right? And so everybody took it for granted that, you know, our Superman was going to straighten everything out and had 4 more years. And you know what? It didn't happen. And now we have to save ourselves, right? And saving ourselves starts at the local level, not the national level. We need to stop waiting for Superman.
So what is local government within a county?
So local government is made up of a lot of different parts, right? So in the United States, and there are some states that do things a little bit differently. Texas, for example, they don't have county commissioners. They have a guy called a judge, and he's not a legal judge. He's like the mayor of the county or something, right? And so it's a weird name to us. But I'm going to describe the way it works in Florida because that's very common, and you know, probably most states follow our model. But in counties, we have 67 counties in Florida, and each of those counties has its own county government. So typically that's called a county commission, and it has either 5 or 7 commissioners, and the commissioners are elected, and they can pass county ordinances. They have an enormous amount of power. The county commissioners affect your day-to-day life more than any national politician does. And you probably never even knew that.
Mm-mm.
And as an example that we can all identify with, it was the county commissioners that passed the mask mandates. It was the county commissioners that passed the lockdowns, that ordered restaurants to close and businesses to close and churches to close. The county commissioners did that. The federal government doesn't have authority to do that.
Does the governor?
That's a good question. I would say the governor does not clearly have the ability to do that. And in Florida, post-pandemic, they've made a lot of changes to the governor's authority, and now I would wonder if he has, you know, even arguable powers to do that. So it's those local jurisdictions. Now, the state legislature is the one that defines how much power the counties have. And so we used to be, and over time, I've done some research on this, and it's kind of interesting. The amount of autonomy that counties have tends to ebb and flow between the generations, right? So it'll go one way where counties get more power, and then something like this crazy pandemic happens, and then there's a backlash, and the state governments take power away from them. And that's kind of where we are right now. We're drifting backwards in Florida and in some other conservative states. That's not happening in the blue states. So the blue states, the counties are still as powerful as they've ever been. Mm-hmm. Within a county, you've got municipalities. Those are the cities. And the cities have their own set of folks who run them. They've got city commissioners, and those are, you know, there's different numbers depending on how many cities. Some of them have a lot of city commissioners, like Miami, Palm Beach. You know, they've got really big populations, and they got big commissions. Cities have mayors. There are different kinds of mayors. There's strong mayors and weak mayors. Strong mayors have a lot of power. Weak mayors have very few powers, and they just kind of manage the city commissioners. So they'll call the meeting to order, they'll create the agenda, and some things like that. So they have some power, but not like strong mayors do. That's just different city to city to city. So even within one county, you could have one city with a strong mayor and one city with a weak mayor. There are other elected office holders that have a lot of influence. Sheriffs is a great example. A county sheriff is possibly the most powerful political entity that we have in this country.
Really?
They have crazy broad powers. They're the ones who enforce or don't enforce the laws. They have arrest powers. They've got things called police powers, and when I say that, that's a term that's not just, it doesn't mean like police officers. Police powers is a much broader concept that refers to health, safety, and welfare. So, and this is true for the county commissioners too. They've got police powers, and police powers means they can literally do anything they need to do to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the community. So it's very broad. Now, they're restrained by the Constitution. The Constitution limits what they can do, but as long as they don't violate the Constitution, they can do whatever they want inside of that sphere. And the sheriff, unlike the county commission where you have to have people voting and, you know, there's majorities and minorities and those can shift, the sheriff is one guy, right? So he sets his policy and he goes and carries out his policy, and sheriffs have politics.
Where are they in lines of power compared to a mayor?
Sheriff is going to be much more powerful. A county sheriff is much more powerful than a mayor, typically.
And more powerful than the commissioners?
Well, this is where you get into sort of categorical arguments. So on a day-to-day basis, a sheriff clearly is at the top of the pack. They've got common law powers that transcend the Constitution. They could arrest a federal agent, for example, for a law violation or a constitutional violation. A sheriff can. But a county commission can pass laws. So a county commission can pass a law that says you can't have a dock that goes into a lake, and you may have to take your dock down, right? Or it'll say you can't build any new ones, and so you buy a house on the lake and you can't build a dock, but your neighbor gets to have one because they had it before the law was passed. That's a very minor example. In the pandemic, we saw that they can do things like, not in the first district anymore, but they can say you have to wear a face mask to stop a disease, right? So they can pass those laws, and that becomes permanent. It lasts beyond the current county commission. Whereas, the sheriff, if the sheriff gets replaced, you get a new sheriff and you get a whole new set of policies and everything. So it's a little bit different.
Okay. And you brought up ordinances. Can you explain what that is and how that can be used?
An ordinance is a law at the county or city level. Now, this is very interesting, and this is really, really important. We talk a lot about needing to fix the laws or pass new laws or change laws or get rid of laws, right? That's a hot topic. And it's really important to protecting our freedoms that we get these laws dialed in the right way. So, for example, we wanted laws that said local governments can't require masks. And the Florida legislature passed a law, not an ordinance. That's what they have. They have statutes. The state passes statutes. The county and cities pass ordinances. The state is the most powerful in terms of its ability to pass laws and statutes, but it has a serious limitation. It only does it once a year. So all year long, the legislators work on a package of proposed laws. And it takes so long, there's so many steps. They have to go through committees, they have to be read on the floor of the House or the Senate and voted on. If they don't get approved, they have to go back to committee and get adjusted and come back, and that process takes a whole year. And so they have what's called a legislative session that starts in January of every year and goes through about March. And during that time, they're actually passing bills into law. They're creating new statutes, and then those go to the governor to either be signed or vetoed. But here's the thing, and this is why local government can be so much more powerful than even state government, because county commissioners and city commissioners can propose and pass ordinances anytime. They can probably do a new ordinance if they move it fast and they fast track it. They could probably get one done in 10 days.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say a month or two.
No, they can do it fast. And then if it's an emergency, they can do it in 5 days.
What would be an example of an emergency ordinance?
Well, so like any of these health or safety ordinances related to the pandemic would be an example. Now, most counties didn't do it. They did it in their one-day method because they didn't even want to wait that long, and they also didn't want to open it up for public debate, because even at the 5-day method, you still have to let the public come in and make public comment.
Is that sunshine law?
It's related to sunshine law.
Okay.
But they used executive orders or emergency orders during the pandemic, which did not require public notice and did not require public participation. Now, their ability to issue those emergency orders has been greatly limited by the legislature in the last legislative session. So just at the beginning of this year, they drastically cut counties' ability to issue emergency orders. So, but my philosophy never depended on emergency orders. That's not the way to do it. We can get a huge amount done using regular ordinances. And think about this. In a standard county commission, let's say a 5-member commission, you need 3 members to vote in favor to pass an ordinance. That's all you need. You only need 3. That's a majority. So that's how important it is for us to get a hold of these county commissions and get the right people on them. Because if 3 go the other way, then you get really bad ordinances. Mm-hmm. Right? So we can, for example, there's a lot of angst right now about obscene materials in school textbooks. Mm-hmm. And part of the problem is that our criminal statutes about showing obscene materials to minors isn't strong enough. Mm-hmm. But we could fix that at the county level. That's something you could pass an ordinance about. Counties can create crimes. Now, they're limited. They can't create felonies. A felony is any crime that requires more than a year in jail. That's there's a little bit more to it, but that's the main distinction between a misdemeanor and a felony, is that year in prison. But counties can create misdemeanors. And misdemeanors can go up to a year in jail per violation. So one of the things I was working on during the pandemic was trying to get a county somewhere to make it a crime for a pharmacy to refuse to fill a COVID prescription written by a licensed doctor in Florida for ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine, for example. It would have only taken 3 county commissioners to get that done somewhere on a 5-member commission. If it was a 7-member commission, obviously, then you need 5. Mm-hmm. 4. Math. So that's how important the local county commission is, because once you control it with strong commissioners who are willing to be active, then suddenly you have a wide open landscape to what you can do to reinforce freedom. Mm-hmm. The same thing is true on a smaller scale at the city level. We've got a terrible city commission here in Gainesville, so it's a great negative example. And our city is basically bankrupt. It's hundreds of millions of dollars in debt and has no way to dig its way out. And yet they continue to pass crazy new programs like hiring a bunch of inspectors to go out and inspect rental houses to tell landlords what they have to fix to cut down on their greenhouse gases, right? And they have a giant expensive celebration for Pride Week, where they paint all the intersections rainbow colored and have all these festivals and things that are being paid for by a city that's broke. So that's what happens when your city commission gets out of control. And it's not a secret in Gainesville, and I'm not hurting anybody's feelings to say that a lot of the city commissioners in Gainesville have prior criminal history.
Wow.
Yeah. And so here it comes. This is the reason. About 40 years ago, they passed a resolution in Alachua County that created cross-member districts, which means that if there's five districts that control the 5 seats on the county commission, right? So you have District 1, District 2, District 3, and those are geographically described. So different areas of the county are the different districts. But they passed a resolution 40 years ago allowing anybody in any district to vote for a county commissioner in a different district. So if you live in District 5, you can help elect the District 1 county commissioner. And so that means that where the concentration of population is in the county controls everything. So if there's one highly populated city in one of those districts, it's electing all the county commissioners for all the different districts. And so those smaller cities in the other districts have no voice on the county commission. That happened because conservatives like me were asleep at the switch. We weren't paying attention to local politics. And the Democrats, starting about 40 years ago, created a local government strategy to take over local governments, county by county by county. And they have been largely successful. And you see, crazy abuses of this in elected positions like the district attorney, right? Fortunately, we don't have too much of this. There are a few counties with this problem that have Soros-funded district attorneys, but all you have to do is look to places like Chicago or San Francisco or Portland, Oregon, and you can see what's happening. They're electing these district attorneys that don't prosecute crimes. So, for example, they've decided not to prosecute any shoplifting charge where the goods stolen are under $1,000. And it's created mayhem. It has led to very, very quickly exactly what you think it would look like. They're not prosecuting drug crimes. So, again, we don't see it because it's not happening in Florida yet, not yet. But if you go on YouTube and you Google streets of Portland, there are YouTubers who just drive around all day and videotape the street. And what you see is just drug addict after drug addict doing the most. It's a family podcast, so I'm not even going to say what kinds of things that you can see them doing. You can see them doing they're living like animals in broad daylight downtown on the streets of big cities. And the reason is that these Soros-funded district attorneys are refusing to prosecute drug crimes. And so the cops don't arrest anybody anymore because the DAs won't prosecute. And that's an elected position. It got so bad in San Francisco that last week they just recalled their liberal district attorney in liberal San Francisco. So imagine how bad it must have been for them to recall their, very highly diverse liberal district attorney that they elected in the last election. It's near anarchy. And so the reason I'm telling you about that is That's where they want to go. And if we don't get control of local government, that's what's going to happen here too. So it's critical that we get control of local government.
So how can the people in these counties, are we the ones that take information to our commissioners, or do they come up with it? Like, can a group of people get together and say, this would be a great ordinance? And do they present it to the commissioners and then the commissioners get together?
Yeah, I think you generally have the right idea. Part of the problem, and I'm going to use myself as a bad example, right? Before the pandemic, I never even voted in a local election. I was too busy, right? I would show up for the presidential elections and vote for president when we had one of those every 4 years. But on all these little elections that they have throughout the year in the local area, I wouldn't go. I couldn't have told you the name of one school board member. That's how you let it slip away. And what you're doing is you're relying on other people to do the work, right? So you're thinking, to your question, you're like, well, how are these ordinances getting thought of, and how are they getting, on the agenda so that the commissioners can vote on it? Well, before we were just thinking, hey, the commissioners will take care of it, That's what they're elected for. They'll do the right thing. They'll come up with these ideas. No, that's 100% wrong. That is a lie that we have been told, and we believed it to put us to sleep. Those kinds of things have to come from the people. We know what we need. We're free citizens in the United States of America, which means we take responsibility for governing ourselves. We're not outsourcing it to somebody else. And so there's a little burden here, right? They used to call it civics education. And again, I think that was another lie that they used to confuse us, was to sort of compress what it means to be a citizen, which is understanding how all this stuff works. You've got to educate yourself. You're a free citizen, right? If that's what you want, if you want to be a free citizen, then you have to take responsibility for figuring out how this stuff works, and not waiting for somebody to tell you, right? That's the lie, that they're going to package it up into something called civics class and they're going to hand it to you in high school and that's all you need to know, right? No, that was designed to put you to sleep. That was designed to trick you into thinking that you're good because, you don't need to know that much because other people are taking care of it. Well, that's not what being a free citizen means. You've got to if you're not taking responsibility for yourself, somebody else will take responsibility for you.
Well, thank you for explaining that. When is the election for commissioners? Is that what's in August every year?
It varies from county to county. Those things, some of those dates are set by the state, and some of them are allowed to be set locally. The commission seats are usually staggered, so they don't all come up at the same time. They usually run in like 3-year terms, and depending on the election, there might only be 2 or 3 that come up. There's certain circumstances, like somebody can get removed from office or die or get in a scandal or something like that, and then you might get an extra seat. So you have to pay attention, right? You have to know what the calendar is in your area. And this is where it's really helpful to become part of an organization like CCDF, because it's hard to do on your own, right? And it's overwhelming. Where do you even start? And we've all been so woefully undereducated about this stuff that it is overwhelming, right? We should have been taught this stuff from birth, and now we're playing catch up. So get involved with something like CCDF or one of these other good, solid, local grassroots organizations, and they're going to have more experienced people who can help mentor you.
Can you speak to the strategy legal side of CCDF in these local counties?
Well, yes, I can. But first I want to make a really important distinction, and that is there's a Superman fallacy that is attached to the legal side. one of the most rewarding parts of the pandemic has been for me as a lawyer that before the pandemic, I used to just get ribbed about lawyer jokes all the time, right? What do you call 50 dead lawyers a good start, right? Stuff like that. So now I'm everybody's hero, right? The lawyer, I'm everybody's best friend now because everybody's terrified that the direction the country's going in, and they want the lawyers to run in and fix it. And so whenever I answer the question that you just asked me, I always start this way, because ultimately the first thing I want you to realize is that you've got the responsibility for stopping injustice. You're a free citizen, right? Just like we were just talking about. The lawyers are a tool that you can use in some circumstances to help you achieve that goal. And that's my job as CCVF Legal, is to be that tool in the toolbox. Now, what's the most important thing about any home improvement job that you want to approach to fix something in your house? And I don't know if you're handy, so I won't push you to answer, but the answer is you've got to have the right tool. If you use the wrong tool, you're going to struggle. And you're going to drive
I do know that.
Yes, and you're going to go back and forth from Home Depot a whole bunch of times and ultimately be very dissatisfied with the result.
Yes.
But if you have the right tool, the job is easy. Okay? So when we face different problems in our local community, the first thing we have to figure out is what is the right tool for this job. And so the calls that we get are a whole spectrum of issues. And some of the issues we're the exact right tool for, and some of the issues we're not the right tool for that issue. And I don't know how much time I have. I suspect I don't have enough time to give you a whole dissertation on this, so I'll just break it into two groups.
Okay.
Okay? Two very, very broad groups. There's the legal side, and there's the political side, right? We're not a good tool for political issues. That's where you need to change a law, you need to get a new law passed, you need to get rid of a law, right? Those are all political types of things. You need to get rid of a politician who's an awful, bad politician. That's really more needs political tools, not legal tools, right? So I'll get calls and they'll say, Jeff, we have this horrible superintendent that's about to, put all this CRT and diversity stuff into the school, and, it's the worst, and we need to get rid of her. And I'm like, okay, so you're calling the lawyer because why? Well, we want you to sue the school district to get rid of this bad superintendent. Well, that's not how it works. We're in a democracy, right? If lawyers could just sue to get rid of bad politicians, that's not a democracy. We're overriding the people's votes when we do that, right? The people have voted, and a majority of the people, for whatever reason, voted for this knucklehead. So the answer is we need a political campaign to get rid of that person in the next election. Now, if they're violating the law, so we have an anti-CRT law now. That's a new law that Governor DeSantis signed and the legislature created. And if they break that law, that's what your lawyer's for. I'm the right tool for that job. Okay, so just to give you a couple of examples, we have a lawsuit going in Hillsborough County right now where the supervisor of elections received millions of dollars from the Chad Zuckerberg fund and can't account for where the money went or won't. And so that's a violation of Florida sunshine laws. They have to tell us where the money went. So we're suing the supervisor of elections and this third-party company that they hired to do a Get Out the Vote campaign to see exactly what they spent all those millions of dollars on, because they're violating the law. I also, just over the weekend, we filed a lawsuit to remove a candidate from the ballot because they're not qualified, because they haven't been a member of the Republican Party of Florida for a year. They've been a member less than a year. So they shouldn't be on the ballot. And unfortunately, you would think that the Division of Elections enforces those rules, but they don't. Their job is only to make sure the paperwork's been filled out right. Somebody has to sue to disqualify a candidate. And you only have like 10 days after the qualification period is over to file the lawsuit. It's a tiny little window, okay? But I'm a good tool for that. You can't do that politically. There's no political tool. You can call the governor and complain all you want, but they're not going to take that person off the ballot. You have to get a court to order that done because they violated the law requiring a minimum of being in the Republican Party for at least a year before you can run for Congress as a Republican. Are you following me?
I'm tracking. Yes. So that's the way that CCDF takes a legal approach, is through one of those two. We do both.
Right, and I am heading up the legal team for CCDF. So we're lawyers and people who support lawyers, and so we look for those issues where a lawyer is a good tool for the job. If a political solution is the right tool, there are other parts of CCDF that support counties in doing that as well.
Yes, so thank you for making that clarification. And listeners, I hope you were educated and learned something from this podcast. So Jeff, thank you so much for being on Liberty USA today.
You're welcome.
See you next time.
All right, I'll see you then. Take care.
Thank you for tuning in to Liberty USA, sponsored by County Citizens Defending Freedom. Give us a like or drop a comment, follow us on social media, and share with your friends. If you liked what you heard, support our mission in empowering American citizens to defend their freedoms and liberty at the local level. Learn more and fund your freedom today by donating at ccdfusa.com. Remember, freedom is in your DNA.